it could be said that we're exploring the nature of the fire that we have in us that bakes the dough of our life's experiences, our wisdom, into the bread that nurtures life. And it's also a time of very great change. So there's that old, rather long story that addresses both. And it's that story of Hassan. Now, Hassan was handsome, strong, young man, but his family had lived in poverty for many, many decades. Now, Hassan made a barely subsistence living by using the only two utensils he had, a spade and a pick, to be a daily laborer, making a few coins each day, working on the roads or on building sites. But even though living this subsistence life, Hassan was a happy man, because Hassan had the most beautiful wife in the world. Not only was she physically beautiful, but she was gentle and kind and intelligent. They had 2 children. Hassan loved her with all his being. So after his daily labor, he would go home happy to be in the arms of his beloved Serena. Now Serena loved him also dearly, but she often had one regret, and that regret was that she could not afford to go to the public baths and bathe and gossip with the other women that were there. And Hassan was aware of this. So on an occasion, he gathered a few coins together which would allow his beloved wife to go, taking her bundle of clothes to the public baths. Now, as it happened, when Serena took her bundle of clothes and walked the long distance to the town where the bathhouse was located, when she arrived there, the bathkeeper said, "The bathhouse is closed today because we have a VIP arriving." Oh, Serena begged, "I've come a great distance. Let me hide in the shadows in the corner of the bathhouse. I won't make any disturbance at all." And she found out that the VIP who was coming was the wife of the king's astrologer. So Serena took herself into the corner of the bathhouse, and in with her entourage came the wife of the court astrologer. But when her silks and satins were taken off by her servants, there she was, the ugliest mound of blubber that one could imagine. You can picture it yourself. So there was Serena sitting in the corner looking at this ugly mound of flesh. And she could not but think to herself, well, look at me, I'm born with this physical beauty, and there she is, so ugly, and she's so rich and well taken care of, and I'm so poor. So after the bath, when Serena made her way back to her house, when her son came back from his daily labor, Serena confronted him and said, "Tomorrow you are going to change your life. from tomorrow you are going to be an astrologer. Now Hassan said, but I know absolutely nothing about astrology. How can I be an astrologer? Serena said, I've made up my mind. If you don't become an astrologer, we're going to be divorced. That's it. I'm going to separate from you. I'm going to leave you. Well, of course, Hassan was absolutely shattered, and in no way was he going to give up his beloved Serena. So the very next day, with great trepidation, he took his shovel and his pick down and he sawed it. And he purchased for himself a piece of white cloth that he could use as a turban, an astrolabe, and a lexicon. And he made his way down to the steps of the mosque, where he set up a little box. And he tried to keep himself hidden so that no one would see him, because he knew nothing about astrology. But as he was sitting there on the steps with his little box with his astrolabe and his, along came this well-dressed looking man and said to him, I'm the leading retainer of the richest merchant in town, and he has lost a camel covered in jewels that was being brought to him. Tell me where it is. So sweat started to pour out from Hassan's face, and he started to quiver and shake. But then something from within him rose up, and out of his lips he said to the well-dressed man, go to the market and buy a bag of chickpeas, turn yourself around 3 times, and in the direction that you face, drop the chickpeas until you come to the end, and there will be the camel. So the man put a few silver coins in Hassan's hand, and off he went. Well, Hassan was really happy. For the first time in all of their life, he could go and buy some kebabs for his family. So that evening, they feasted on kebabs, and with Hassan sort of beating his chest, but I'm not an astrologer, I don't know anything about astrology. But of course, the next day he had to front up with great fear. He took his box and put on his white turban and sat on the mosque steps. And then all of a sudden, coming towards him was the same man as yesterday, with these 2 burly servants beside him. And Hassan thought, oh my God, they're coming for me. They found out that I'm a fraud. They're coming to get me. They're coming to take me to the police station. So when they arrived, bringing himself up to his full stature, the well-dressed man said, I want you to come with me. Well, with great fear, Hassan had to go along with the well-dressed man and the 2 burly servants, and they took him back to the merchant's house, where the merchant greeted him with great aplomb and said, yes, we found our camel with all the jewels on it, and now I want you to be my personal astrologer. I will retain you with a stipend. Each month you'll get this amount, and you're my personal astrologer. So of course Hassan was over the moon. He was going to have a regular income. His hand was paved with silver, and he went back to his wife and told her, and of course he was delighted. But he said, I'm not an astrologer, I know nothing about astrology, what are we going to do? She said, don't worry, God will take care of it. Well, everything was hunky-dory for a whole month. Nothing happened. So Hassan would front up every day to the merchant's house, and he'd get his stipend, and they lived very well. But then one day when he arrived at the merchant's house, all hell had broken loose. As it happened, 40 thieves had come through the night and cleaned out the merchant's warehouses. So of course the merchant called his astrologer to him and said, find my treasures. Now, Hassan was beside himself. What was he going to do? So he thought he had to think very fast. He said, well, you know, this is a very, very difficult problem. I'll have to go home and think about this. And so he did, and when he went home, he consulted his wife, Serena. Serena said, "Don't worry, God will take care of us. Go back and tell the merchant that you need 40 days. This is a very difficult problem. You need 40 days to consult the stars." And so Hassan went over. And of course, what could the merchant do? He had to agree with Hassan. And so Hassan was given 40 days. So when he got home to his wife, Serena said, "Now go to the market and buy 40 dates so that we can count off the days." So this is what Hassan did. But you know, as it happened, the thieves had heard about the merchant's astrologer, and they were a bit quaking in their boots. They didn't know who this Hassan was. So they decided that they'd check out, they'd send one of them to check out what this Hassan was about. So that night one of the thieves came to Hassan's house and hid under the window to listen to what was going on, just as Hassan had finished his pilaf and ate a date, and threw it in the jar that was under the window and said, "There goes one." So the thief went back to his chief thief and he said, "He knows about us." So every night after that, one of the thieves came round under the window and Hassan would throw another date, and there goes another one. So of course, after the 40 days were up, Hassan was quaking in his boots, waiting for the knock on the door that were going to be the gendarmes who were going to come and take him away because... And sure enough, there was a knock on the door. And when he opened the door, there was a strange man outside. And the strange man said, "I'm the head of the thieves, and I know that you know about us, but I want to make a bargain with you. If we tell you where all the treasure is, will you keep quiet about who we are, so that and we'll beat it out of town?" And well, of course Hassan agreed to this totally. So he got the information about where all the treasure was held. He went off to the merchant's house and told the merchant where it was, and all his treasures were recouped. The thieves beat it out of town, never to be seen again. Well, of course, the merchant was over the moon. He wanted to have a great festival, a great feast for Hassan to celebrate the retrieval of all his goods. So a reception was arranged. But, you know, on the night of the reception, really in his honor, Hassan said, "Yes, it's all very well, but I'm not an astrologer. I know nothing about astrology. What are we going to do?" And Serena said, "Well, you know, well, I've got an idea. Why don't you, when you go to the reception, you drag the merchant off his chair and wrestle him to the ground, and they'll think you've gone mad, and he'll let you go from his employ." So Hassan fronted up to the reception, and he went down in between where everyone was seated. He grabbed the merchant off his throne-like chair that was, and dragged him to the floor and put him. And then someone noticed that there was a deadly scorpion sitting on the chair of the merchant. So there was great celebration again. The merchant was so thankful. He lined Hassan's hand with gold and said what a wonderful fellow he was. Well, of course, you know, Hassan was getting to be quite rich now, and his wife was very happy, but he kept beating his brow, saying, "But I'm not an astrologer. What are we going to do? I'm going to be found out that I'm a fraud." Well, Serena said, "Well, you know, the merchant goes to the public baths on the 5th day of every week. Next time he goes to the public baths, look, embarrass him. Go into the baths, drag him out into the street naked, and embarrass him in front of everyone. That'll do it. He'll let you go." So this is what Hassan did. The day that the merchant went to the public baths, Hassan went in, grabbed the merchant, dragged him out into the street in his naked state, and threw him down on the roof of the bathhouse. Well, the the merchant, of course, he could not then bear to have Hassan out of his sight. He wanted Hassan with him every minute of every day, his personal astrologer. How could he? So one day, when Hassan was passing time with the merchant decided to go out hunting. So they got horses, and they got onto their horses and they went out hunting. But as they were out hunting, one of those flying grasshoppers happened to land on the merchant's sleeve, and he thought to himself, now this is a chance for me to test my Hassan. So he took the grasshopper and held it in his hand. He rode over to Hassan and he said, my favorite and beloved astrologer, I want you to tell me what I have in my hand. Well, immediately Hassan started to sweat. Again, he thought, this is my moment of truth. I'm going to be found out now as a total fraud. And then, from within, deep within his being, through the sweat and the shaking, the words came out. Grasshopper in the grass, grasshopper flying, grasshopper in the palm of the hand. The merchant opened his hand, and there was the grasshopper. Well, that evening, when Hassan went home, he dashed in to his house. He caught up his beloved Serena in his arms, and he said, beloved wife, my beloved wife, Serena, I now know that God wants me to be an astrologer, and I bend to God's will. What does this story tell us about the fire that we have within us that cooks up the dough of our life's experiences, the wisdom, makes it into the bread? What does this story tell us? Along with many other confirmations for us, as all these Sufi stories are. How does it enable us to answer the question, what is this fire that we have? Ever burning, ever ready. What does this story tell us? Thank you, thank you.